You're a former oil company CEO.
All these massive CEOs that are in charge of looking at government spending and cutting down on it. And so far what they found is we need to cut Medicare and Medicaid systems, and we're not supposed to think that this is some kind of legitimate billionaire oligarchy that the government has been stacked with. This is unironically insane and a threat to our democracy.
You know who complains the loudest? The fraudsters.
This is the new marching order. Anybody who criticizes this administration is just a fraudster and they're lying. It's the new slop you're supposed to pump out all over social media. But it is taking us a significant amount of time to parse through the deceptive way that they push out this information. Time to get torqued up, guys. Let's get this going. This looks like an interesting Fox News report with Elon Musk and Doge. I'm curious about it, especially since Doge is inflating their claims drastically of how much they've actually saved. They haven't been able to prove their drastic figure of roughly, I think it's $115 billion. They haven't been able to actually show receipts for it, and they've had to remove a significant amount of the money they claimed that they had saved. But let's go.
How much do you think you've achieved so far?
Let's see.
Thanks for having us.
I'll turn it up in a second.
Doing this, I know there's a lot of interest in this. First, let me start with you, Elon. What are the budgetary savings goals, and how much do you think you've achieved so far?
Our goal is to reduce the deficit by $1 trillion.
We don't even. Do we even? Okay, great.
So from a nominal deficit of $2 trillion to try to cut the deficit in half to $1 trillion, or looked at it in total federal spending to drop the federal spending from $7 trillion to $6 trillion. We want to reduce the.
Well, another way that you could drop the deficit is increase taxes, right, on specifically rich people, right? That is a way you could do it. Obama was getting close to that. Was getting close from going from a deficit to a surplus. I mean, he cut our spending in half from $1.5 trillion or $1.3 trillion annual federal deficit. So the amount of money that you're spending over what you're taking in, that's a deficit. And he got us down to $650 billion. Right, we were getting into a good spot. Trump inflated that pre-COVID to $1 trillion. Then COVID hit. Obviously, a lot of money's going to go in there. I guess we're roughly at $2 trillion now. It makes sense to get that down, but I don't think coming in and trying to implement massive tax cuts makes sense. I mean, we need reasonable expenditures, especially now with people losing jobs because technology is displacing them. You're really going to have to figure out a way to tax rich people more than anything else.
The spending by eliminating waste and fraud, reduce the spending by 15%, which seems really quite achievable. The government is not efficient, and there's a lot of waste and fraud. So we feel confident.
Well, you say that there's a lot of waste and fraud, but they fired inspector generals. That's their job, is to audit the government. And the waste and fraud in our government doesn't exist in the way that you want to pretend that it does. There definitely is waste in the government. A lot of that waste, I would say, is people being lazy, right? I used to work a union job. You know what I mean? You work half the day. You fuck around half the day. You know what I mean? I'm not necessarily worried about that. The bigger issue, I would say, is that the government's not being effective in figuring out how to cut costs of housing and healthcare. They don't care enough. Neither party cares enough about this. That's the real problem. And so we're obviously all pissed off because we do spend a lot of money in taxes. But then on top of that, it costs you $4,000 a month just to rent a fucking home. It's imagine they were able to get the cost of your rent down by a third. So instead of spending $4,000, you're spending $2,700. You'd have so much more money in your pocket. You'd feel better. But we're blaming kind of the wrong thing. We're paying the government to be effective, and they're not targeting the right stuff. And we're not advocating for ourselves correctly and saying oh wait, yeah, we pay taxes, but that's not really the big issue, is it? It's the fact that you guys we're paying taxes to a government that's not trying to help us reduce housing costs and healthcare costs. That's what we need to do. Because right now, what Elon Musk is doing is he's just randomly trying to cut things. He went on Joe Rogan and said that the entirety of Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. That's silly. You can have criticisms of Social Security. It keeps old people from dying. It keeps them afloat. It keeps them alive, as well as disabled people. It works well. It's a good system to implement. Is it perfect? No. If you had that money, could you invest it better? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it's a safety net for people who don't necessarily have the means to save money, especially now when housing costs are insane. And so when he says he wants to save money, he's been ineffective. They haven't shown any receipts for any of the stuff that they've done. It's not I like the idea of better government spending. They haven't been able to execute it properly.
Confident that a 15% reduction can be done without affecting any of the critical government services.
I'm going to talk to all the guys.
But he literally calls Social Security. So when he says critical services, he's trying to say that's open to interpretation. I consider Social Security critical government service. He doesn't.
Better.
I'm going to talk to all the guys here about the specifics. But for you, what's the most astonishing thing you found out in this process?
The sheer amount of waste and fraud in the government.
With what?
It is astonishing.
Like what?
It's mind-blowing.
Like what?
We routinely encounter wastes of $1 billion or more.
Like with what?
Casually.
Like with what? These are the same people that said that they saw 200-year-olds getting Social Security payments. They never proved that. They couldn't show us any proof of that.
For example, like the simple survey that was literally a 10-question survey that you could do with SurveyMonkey, cost you about $10,000. The government was being charged almost $1 billion for that.
For what? What is he talking about? What is he specifically?
Just the survey.
$10,000. That was literally a 10-question survey that you could do with $1 billion or more, casually.
Okay.
For example, like the simple survey that was literally a 10-question survey that you could do with SurveyMonkey, cost you about $10,000. The government was being charged almost $1 billion for that.
What survey is he referencing? Yeah, okay. So there's no receipt for. I'm looking to see that there's a receipt for this. There's no receipt for this. I can't trust this person. I don't trust this person who's had to quietly walk back billions of dollars in supposed savings that they made on the Doge website, where they triple counted a USAID contract that was $655 million and they inflated it to $1.8 billion, where they said that they saved $8 billion from ICE when it was actually $8 million. That's a massive overstatement. When they said that they saved $1.9 billion in an IRS cancellation contract that was actually removed under the previous administration. I don't trust him when he says, hey, this thing on SurveyMonkey, I don't even know what that is, was only supposed to cost $10,000, but we spent $1 billion. Do you have any receipts? They don't show it. They don't show any of it. She doesn't show any proof for any of the claims he makes. It's a huge problem.
For just the survey.
$1 billion for a simple online survey, do you like the national park? And then there appeared to be no feedback loop for what would be done with that survey. So the survey would just go to nothing. It was like insane.
You technically are a special government
Well, they're cutting money from. I'm pretty sure they're cutting money for national parks too. That's one of the problems is. Are they not?
Employee, and you're supposed to be 130 days. Are you going to continue past that, or do you think that's what you're going to do? Or you technically are a special government employee, and you're supposed to be 130 days. Are you going to continue past that, or
It's like 4 months.
do you think that's what you're going to do? Or?
5 months.
Well, I think we will have accomplished most of the work required to reduce the deficit by $1 trillion within that time frame.
So in that time frame, 130
Yes.
days, and the process is a report at some point at 100 days? Or?
Not really a report. We are cutting the waste and fraud in real time. So every day that passes, our goal is to reduce.
The question is, are you going to provide a report of the cutting? Not really. We're just kind of doing it now. He knows what he's being asked. He's dodging the question intentionally.
The waste and fraud by $4 billion a day, every day, 7 days a week. And so far we are succeeding.
That's not happening. They have no proof for any of the claims that they're making.
And I'm going to talk to the specifics, but there obviously are Doge critics who are reading all kinds of stuff. Obviously, lawmakers
like, hey, you don't have any facts.
on the other side of the aisle are attacking you. And they characterize the approach as this: fire, ready, and then aim. And how do you approach that?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Like, again, they cut a bunch of air traffic controllers, even though we are in desperate need of that, because they're just trying to save money instead of actually cut down on some form of waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm sure it exists. They're not interested in that. They're interested in just looking like they've gotten a win. And this is a huge problem with Donald Trump's presidency, is he's very loud and he's like, I want to get stuff done, which is a nice thing to do. And then he just tries to fumble around until he gets things done that aren't even necessarily productive. Hey, we want better trade deals. That's great. What should we do? Oh, let's go to a trade war with the rest of the country. Okay. None of this is, it's not productive.
How do you respond to that?
Well, I do agree that we actually want to be careful in the cuts. So we want to measure twice, if not thrice. And
that's not true.
Cut once. Actually, that is our approach. They may characterize it as shooting from the hip, but it is anything but that.
Okay, well, show us some receipts and we'll be good.
Which is not to say that we don't make mistakes. If we were to approach this with the standard of making no mistakes at all, that would be like saying someone in baseball's got to bat 1,000. That's impossible.
Yeah, but there's also a lack of transparency in what they're doing. It's another problem.
So when we do make mistakes, we correct them quickly, and we move on.
Some people say this shouldn't take a rocket scientist. Steve Davis, you are a rocket scientist.
You used to be.
Yeah, and now essentially you're the chief operating officer of Doge, day-to-day operations. Fair to say?
Yeah, part of the Doge team.
So how did you end up here? What's the biggest challenge you see?
The reason I'm here, which is probably for many, is that I think the goal is incredibly inspiring. I think most of the taxpayers in the country would agree that in order to have the country going bankrupt would be a very bad thing, and therefore the country going not bankrupt is a good thing.
Sure, but the problem with, and I totally agree with that. The problem with this is that this administration isn't willing to do what needs to be done to reduce the deficit, and that is increase taxes, especially on rich people. You know, like the latest tax proposals reduce taxes on the rich. I think they increase taxes on, the middle class, but that's not getting things done. There's not enough waste, fraud, and abuse in the government to just massively cut. Again, this guy's talking about cutting Social Security, calling it a fraud and a Ponzi scheme. You're not just going to be able to government cut to save this money. You're going to have to increase taxes, especially since the middle class is paying fewer and fewer taxes generally because it's disappearing because you have technology displacing jobs and driving down wages. And so we have to figure this out, but they're not willing to do that because it doesn't look optically good for their message of just constantly cut taxes. They're not productive. They don't want to actually solve the problem. They want to virtue signal to their audience that they're doing a really good thing.
That all of us are willing to kind of put our lives on hold in order.
That kills incentive to work hard. So the harder I work, the more successful I am, the more I tax. I mean, listen, I understand the sentiment. Genuine question, like how much money do you make? And also, do you really think that you're going to stop working harder to make more money just because you're going to have a marginal tax increase? Because it doesn't kill any incentive. I mean, not to be rude, I almost guarantee that I make more money than you by a pretty long shot. I am fine with paying more taxes. It's marginal. You don't pay just like a flat increase in your taxes. It's like, let's say your first 10,000 is taxed at like 5%. Your next 10,000 is taxed at 10%. So the first 5,000, you understand what I'm saying? So like if you make a certain amount of money, you're not losing all of it. And it doesn't kill the incentive at all. People are still going to want to make more money. It's a fantasy argument that people make up. And I feel like a lot of people who say stuff like that are people who don't make a lot of money. A lot of the people who advocate for not raising taxes on rich people are people who are like, I will be rich one day. I want to keep all my money. But you'll have a higher chance of being rich one day if we're providing the correct resources to everybody, especially children, to set them up positively in the future through schooling, which would require tax increases. So I don't know, man. Like, I'm sorry. I think that you might be poor and I love you, but I think that you're like holding on to this American dream that doesn't exist because we're not taxing the rich enough. There's no disincentive because you have a marginal tax increase if you make more money, especially with all the tax breaks that you get for different write-offs that you're able to engage in.
To do, I think the thing that's special right now is we actually believe there's a chance to succeed. That there's an administration that's supportive and a great cabinet and just a great group that will actually make success a possible outcome. And I think that's, given the inspiring mission and given the non-zero chance of success, it was worth doing.
I'd just like to sort of reemphasize that point. The success of Doge is only possible with President Trump and with the outstanding cabinet that he selected. It would be.
Are you talking about the people who got the people who just like added some random journalists in on attack plans, which are massively, which is a massive risk to our national security? Is that what you're talking about? This amazing team? If Biden had done the same thing or had the same controversies that Trump had, conservatives would have been losing their fucking minds.
It would be impossible without the support of the president and the cabinet.
But you're finding the money. I mean, it's big numbers, right?
Yeah, like Elon said, the minimum impulse bid is often $1 billion. So, for example, the $830 million, which was the online survey, that's an enormous amount of money.
Can you show us that? There's no receipts online. Can you show us what you're doing? Because they haven't been able to back up anything that they said.
That wouldn't have been found if the Doge team wasn't working with it, in that case, the Department of Interior. But then taking it one step further, Doge then publishes these things on our website.
No, they didn't. They didn't publish this on their website. In fact, almost none of the claims that they make are published on their web. Just to be clear, they publish the savings on the website. They don't publish the proof that they saved on the website. This is the problem. There's no actual proof of any of these cuts existing or being effective.
For maximum transparency. So now
Incorrect. He's just lying. There's no receipts.
General public, it would have been impossible for the general public to have seen that. Now anyone can just log into doge.gov anytime and see these payments as they're not yet.
You can't. You can't see the payments. They don't actually have any meaningful receipts.
In real time, they're close, but they'll probably be in real time within the next few weeks.
But the process it still involves Congress, right? at some level?
We try to keep Congress as informed as possible, but the law does say that money
Wouldn't you want to keep them responsible?
needs to be spent correctly. It should not be spent fraudulently or wastefully. It's not contrary to Congress to avoid waste.
So just to be clear, the Doge website is really just a link to like a bunch of tweets. This isn't receipts for anything. Hey, agencies terminated some wasteful contracts. Here's a picture. Oh, cool. What does that give us? What does this do for us? I don't understand. We need actual receipts of what they're saving here.
Waste and fraud. It is consistent with the law and consistent with Congress. And we've seen actually great support, at least from the Republican side of the House, and occasionally some Democrats too. It's nice to see people cross the aisle once in a while. Usually when they attack Doge, they never attack any of the specifics. So they'll say what we're doing is somehow unconstitutional or illegal or whatever. We're like, well,
maybe. I think that you should at least be transparent. I'm not really sure about the legal side, but the transparency side definitely isn't there.
Line of the cost savings do you disagree with? And they can't point to any.
Because you don't have anything to point to.
And we list them all on Doge.gov and the Doge handle on X. And you'll see just outrageous things, one outrageous thing after another.
Joe Gabbian, besides Elon, you're one of several billionaires here, co-founder of Airbnb, and you wanted to help out.
I bumped into Anthony and Elon probably back in February, and they told me something about a mine that was dealt with retirement, and they said they needed somebody to help out to fix retirement in the government. I love the challenge, so I jumped on board, and it turns out there is actually a mine in Pennsylvania that houses every paper document for the retirement process in the government. Now, picture this giant.
Like, picture this. This is Grok. This is Twitter's own AI. Twitter's own AI. Says Doge asserts transparency by posting actions online, with Musk claiming it's maximally transparent. Yet the lack of detailed audited breakdowns and the reliance on self-reported figures have led experts to question the substantiation. So Elon Musk's own AI is telling us that they do not actually have legitimate, reasonable receipts for any of the actions that they're taking. I mean, it's almost like, somebody from another country immigrated here and now is ruining the government. This is ridiculous, dude. It's fucking dumb as hell.
Giant cave has 22,000 filing cabinets, stacked 10 high to house 400 million pieces of paper.
Okay.
It's a process that started in the 1950s and largely hasn't changed in the last 70 years. Cool. And so as we dug into it, we found retirement cases that had so much paper, they had to fit it on a shipping pallet. So the process takes many months, and we're going to make it just many days.
Will it be digitized, or how?
Absolutely. So this will be an online digital process that will take just a few days at most. And I really think, it's an injustice to civil servants who are subjected to these processes that are older than the age of half the people watching your show tonight.
Sure, we should update. That's like reasonable criticism. We should definitely update the way that we operate our infrastructure. So we really believe that the government can have an Apple Store-like experience, beautifully designed, great user experience, modern systems.
Because right now it's.
I mean, that's true. Just to be clear, that would cost a significant amount of money. And I'm fine with that investment, but you guys are claiming to save money. You wouldn't save money doing this.
By hand.
Yes, the retirement process is all by paper, literally with people carrying paper in manila envelopes into this gigantic mine.
So they can't retire more than a certain number every month?
Yes.
About 8,000 a month.
That's how the reason we discovered it was we were saying, like, well, let's encourage voluntary retirement. They said, well, the most they could do is 8,000 a month. And even under normal circumstances, it can take 6 to 9 months just to have your retirement paperwork processed.
Okay. That seems to be the case, that there's significant delays due to paper with the way that they do these paperworks, which I agree with. They should make that more efficient. But again, that's going to cost more money in the short run. And they often get the calculations wrong. So we're like, well, why would it take so long to retire? And they're like, well, because of the mine. We're like, what do you mean a mine? What's a mine got to do with retiring? And that's where we discovered that all the retirement stuff is. Is Elon retiring? No, he has apparently he's only allowed to do this for 130 days, but he's definitely going to stay on longer. They're going to make some bullshit excuse up once they get to that point.
Still done by paper in a process that looks identical to what occurred in the 1950s. Like, we took a snapshot of the mine when it first started in the 50s to today. It looks the same.
It's amazing. So how long do you think it will take to turn over?
We're working as fast as we can. Probably next couple of months we'll have this overhauled. And I really think, again, why are we subjecting our federal workers to processes that they actually have to go through a training just to retire from the government? There's a whole training program that people have to go through in order to retire. I think we can do better for them.
Aram Mogadassi, Doge engineer. You go into these places, one of the more than a dozen engineers, first people to go into the agencies and view the computer data sets. Tell me what you're finding, and for people who don't understand how that process works, explain it for them.
Yeah. I'll say the first thing that got me really excited about Doge was learning basically the state of government computers. By some estimates, government IT costs about $100 billion, and it's funding systems that are over 50 years old in the case of something like Social Security or the IRS. So really critical systems are old.
Sure, they should be updated. Again, this is going to cost more money. It's just like a little bit strange that they're pretending that it's not.
They cost a lot of money to maintain, and they could be the efforts to improve them are often very delayed. So I thought I'm a software engineer that maybe can make a difference here, and that's really what inspired me at a high level.
There's a lot of mystery about
I mean, that makes sense.
Social Security and a lot of words about it from, here's what Democrats have been saying about it.
It's absurd that Elon Musk is trying to eliminate billions of dollars from Social Security.
Elon Musk and President Trump have set their sights on cutting Social Security.
Their goal is clear: destroy Social Security from within.
Yeah, that's true.
You're in the building. I mean, you're in the computers. What's happening there? What are you doing?
Yeah, it doesn't line up with my experience on the ground. And I'll say the two improvements that we're trying to make to Social Security are helping people that legitimately get benefits, protecting them from fraud that they experience every day on a routine basis, and also make the experience better. And I'll give you one example is at Social Security, one of the first things we learned is that they get phone calls every day of people trying to change direct deposit information. So when you want to change your bank account, you can call Social Security. We learned 40% of the phone calls that they get are from fraudsters.
40%?
That's right. Almost half.
Sure, that has to do with like robocall issues. What does it have to do with what he's talking about? Also, just to be clear, like Elon Musk has publicly said that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. So when this is like some weird whitewashing of what's going on. So Democrats are saying that, but this is what
Elon Musk
saying.
is working, of course, with.
This is what he's saying about this on Joe Rogan.
Like, you could run a real pyramid scheme.
Well, I mean, the government's one big pyramid scheme, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, you can tell me better than anybody.
Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
Is that right? Well, let's.
Yeah, so anyway, when he says that, he's trying to justify eliminating Social Security. That's the whole point. So they are trying to do that. Just because they have these workers come in here and try to whitewash it and pretend like, oh no, we're actually like doing like some pretty normal logical things. They might think that, but the clear tone is to try to cut down on necessary services and destroy these services. They're just trying to figure out a way to market it to people. That's their primary concern, and it's working.
Yes, and they steal people's Social Security is what happens. Is they call in, they say they claim to be a retiree, then they...
Sure, this is like robocallers and old people. What does this have to do with the government systems?
And they convince the Social Security person on the phone to change where the money's flowing. It actually goes to some fraudster. This is happening all day, every day.
I'm sure that it's happening, but what does it have to like do with the government? Like, you would want to put out some kind of training program or something for old people to not fucking give their shit away.
And then somebody doesn't receive their Social Security is because of all the fraud loopholes in the Social Security system.
How do you reassure people that what you
Okay, what do you do about that? Like, he just made this claim, and he's like, what are you going to do about it?
all are doing is not going to affect their benefit?
If they are cutting it, then why aren't you taking out your money? I don't even know what that question means. What does that question mean, dude? What?
Benefits.
No, in fact...
Reassure people that what you all are doing is not going to affect their benefits.
No, in fact, what we're doing will help their benefits. Legitimate people, as a result of the work of Doge, will receive more Social Security, not less. I want to emphasize that.
What are you talking about? You're talking about it's a Ponzi scheme. Okay, so just to be absolutely clear, and one of the biggest things that people need to understand, which is like a legitimate threat when it comes down to their policy on Social Security, Elon Musk has had Doge announce that they are going to permanently close a bunch of Social Security offices, which has not been officially taken effect yet. And they also pressured the Social Security Administration to make it so you can no longer verify by phone, claiming like, oh, there's so much tremendous amount of like fraud from it. But it drastically reduces, especially in combination with shutting down offices, which is what they want to do. This drastically reduces people's accessibility to actually go on to retirement. I am guaranteeing you that there's not enough fraud to justify forcing you to go to Social Security offices and then also closing Social Security offices, make it very difficult for like older people that have unreliable transportation, especially in poor areas where they don't have like a lot of access to a Social Security office. It makes it difficult for them to actually get on their services. And so I understand the fundamental concept of like, oh, you have to go down and verify in person. Sure, I understand. It makes sense. Or online. But like this is accessibility on the phone, and if you're going to in tandem close down actual offices, it's to me that on top of calling Social Security a Ponzi scheme, it sounds like they're trying to desperately gut Social Security and trying to get rid of it and trying to sell and package getting rid of it.
As a result of the work of Doge, legitimate recipients of Social Security will receive more money, not less money.
All right.
Well, how would that work out?
Emphasize that point and let the record show that I said this, and it will be proven out to be true. Let's check back on this in the future.
So Washington Post, the Social Security
Well, how would they get more money? I don't understand. What does that even mean?
Administration website crashed 4 times in 10 days this month because the servers were overloaded, blocking millions of retirees and disabled veterans from logging into their online accounts.
Well, that makes it even more difficult.
Freaked people out. Is that going to change?
Yes, we're going to make sure that the website stays online.
Cool. How are you going to do that?
I mean, but is it a result of going in there or something you're doing?
No. The amount of issues that were with the Social Security system are enormous. As an example, there are over 15 million people that are over the age of 120 that are marked as alive in the Social Security system.
And that's an accurate.
They're not getting paid. Even if this is true, they're not actually getting any money. So what does this matter? This has absolutely nothing to do with anything.
Figure.
Yeah,
correct.
15 million.
Correct. This has been something that's been identified as a problem. Again, pre-existing problems since 2008, at least, from an IG report. So there were some great people working at the Social Security Administration that found this 2008, and nothing was done. And so 15 to 20 million Social Security numbers that were clearly fraudulent were floating around that can be used only for bad intentions. There'd be no way to use this for good intentions. And so one of the things the Doge team is doing is carefully and very methodically looking at those.
All right. The claim that 15 million people are identified as alive in the Social Security Administration database and are over a certain age, often cited as 120 or older, stems from misunderstandings of the Social Security or the SSA data, particularly the what is that, Numident? That's cringe. Database. This figure likely originates from a 2023 SSA Inspector General report, which found that approximately 18.9 million Social Security numbers holders born in 1920 or earlier, making them 100 plus years old as of 2020, lacked death information in the Numident. I want to make sure I'm saying that right. Bro, you better just fucking pronounce this for me or I'm going to light my fucking pubic hair on fire. Oh my God.
Numident.
Yeah, I got it right. Nice. Meaning that they were technically listed as alive. However, this does not mean that 15 million people or even a significant fraction are actively receiving Social Security benefits. Okay, so this doesn't even say that they are still alive. It just says that they lack some death information. That doesn't even mean that they're not listed as dead. It just means that they might lack certain information. And that makes sense because they're so fucking old. Okay, so the Numident is a master file of all Social Security numbers ever issued, totaling over 531 million as of recent audits, and includes historical records dating back to 1936. Okay. Okay, what does that have to do with the website crashing? He just made this, I don't understand. Elon Musk and others, including Doge officials like Steve Davis, have referenced similar numbers, 15 to 20 million over 120 marked alive, to suggest widespread fraud as seen on posts on X and public statements in early 2025. Musk shared a chart in February 2025 claiming that over 20 million people aged 100 plus were in the database, implying that they could be collecting they might be collecting benefits. However, experts at the SSA and SSA officials, like Acting Commissioner Lee Dudick in February 2025, have clarified that these are not active beneficiaries, but rather outdated records. The SSA decided against updating these historical entries, estimating a $5.5 to $9.7 million cost for little programming benefit per the 2023 report. So the reason they didn't update this report is because it's not financially worth it, because it would cost $5 to $10 million. And they're sitting here like, oh, hey, why is the website crashing? Oh, well, there's like a lot of old people in the database. The implication being that they're getting paid Social Security benefits, which is not true. Like, this is ridiculous, no?
And making sure that any fraudulent ones are eliminated.
Brad Smith, working at HHS, and obviously another element is Medicare and Medicaid, NIH. What are you finding?
Yeah, well, I'd say there's a couple things we're really committed to in our work at HHS. Number one, making sure we continue to have the best biomedical research in the world. And number two, making sure, which President Trump has said over and over again, that we 100% protect Medicare and Medicaid. But
okay,
there's a lot of opportunity. So if I take NIH...
I mean, I'm pretty sure that there have been conservatives that have been, or Republicans, pushing bills that would cut these services. I just need you guys to understand that this is like a real threat of us potentially losing, old people potentially losing access to Medicare and Medicaid is a significant threat to their ability to live effectively, right? So as of March 28th, 2025, Republicans in Congress are actively pursuing significant reductions to Medicaid and, to a lesser extent, Medicare as part of a broader budgetary strategy to fund tax cuts and other priorities under Donald Trump's administration. The House Republican budget resolution narrowly passed on February 25th, 2025, with a 218 to 215 vote, instructs the House Energy and Commerce Committee to cut $880 billion over the next decade from programs under its jurisdiction, which primarily include Medicare and Medicaid. This push aligns with Trump's agenda to extend the 2017 tax cuts costing nearly $5 trillion. I'm going to assume that means over 10 years. So these tax cuts, apparently, that's usually how they do figures. So if these figures cost us $5 trillion, $500 billion a year, and increase $500 billion a year is fucking insane, and increase spending on border security, which, by the way, I'm fine with that, while offsetting these costs through reductions in federal spending. But you're not going to be able to cut $500 billion a year. Okay? Preposterous shit. Preposterous shit here. This is fucking insane.
NIH as an example. Today, if you're an NIH researcher and you get a $100 grant at your university, today you get to spend 60 of that and your university spends 40 of that. The policy that we're proposing to make is that you get to spend 85 of that and your university spends 15. So
what does that matter?
It's more money going directly to the scientists who are discovering new cures. Another example at NIH is today they have 27 different centers. They got created over time by Congress, and they're typically by disease state or body system. There's 700 different IT systems today at NIH.
700 different IT systems.
IT software.
Wouldn't doubt this. So let's just get the information of what he's claiming. The idea that 60% of the NIH grants go to scientists and 40% to schools oversimplifies a complex funding structure. In reality, NIH grants are awarded primarily to institutions like universities or research organizations, not directly to scientists or schools. The split refers to the division between direct costs, funding for the research itself, and such as salaries, equipment, and supplies, and indirect cost, overhead for facilities, administration, and infrastructure, often called F&A costs. Historically, the NIH has allowed institutions to negotiate indirect cost rates which vary widely. And here's the thing: there might be a conversation to be had about how much of this money goes to waste. I wouldn't doubt that at all, but it kind of just seems like they have no fucking idea what they're talking about. But okay, great.
700 different IT systems today at NIH.
700 different IT systems.
IT software systems. They can't speak to each other.
So they don't talk to one another.
They have 27 different CIOs. And so when you think about making great medical discoveries, you have to connect the data.
Time out. You said 27 different chief information officers?
Correct.
And most of them are non-technical.
So there's a lot there.
There's a lot of opportunity. It will make science better, not worse.
And when I say that our job is tech support, I really mean it.
Yeah.
We have to fix the computers. If the computers can't talk to each other, you can't get research done. If the computers can't stay online, people won't receive their Social Security.
Okay, sure, but you're trying to cut it anyway. Let's continue to fucking read into this. The claim that National Institutes of Health, NIH, has 700 IT software systems overseen by 27 chief informant officers has circulated widely, particularly, this is after this conversation. We don't need to read this. The NIH is a sprawling organization with 27 institutes and centers. So there's national cancer, heart, lung, blood. I guess there's even more, each with specific research missions, which is why they're divided apparently into 27. Its IT infrastructure managed primarily by the Center of Information Technology, and the Office of the Chief Information Officer supports everything from administrative tasks to cutting-edge biomedical research. The idea of 700 IT systems likely stems from the complexity of this ecosystem. Hundreds of applications, databases, and tools tailored to diverse needs, from grant management to genomic data analysis. So what this sounds to me is like they just have multiple different ways to organize different data that are separate from each other that you wouldn't want to integrate together. Like, why would you want to integrate, like, basically payroll, because there's definitely going to be an IT system for that, with fucking some kind of grant management data? Why would you want to integrate these different forms of data? It doesn't even make sense to me. 2020 NIH IT strategic plan referenced, and by the way, I wouldn't doubt that you could be more effective and efficient with this, but the way that they claim this makes it seem like there's so much of a massive infrastructure problem that the entire system is crumbling. Well, the reality is that it could probably be more effective and efficient, but not to the degree that they are insinuating. Let's see. The CIT mentions supporting thousands of applications, though it doesn't specify 700 exactly. Posts on X and Doge related critiques have launched into this figure, or latched onto this figure, possibly exaggerating or rounding a real estimate from internal audits or congressional testimony. The 27 CIO claim, however, is shakier. The NIH has one CIO under the OCIO, currently at some fucking girl named Adele, rolling in the deep, as of December 2024, overseeing enterprise-wide IT strategy. Each of the 27 institutes doesn't have its own CIO. Some, like NCI or whatever the fuck this is, have NHGRI, have dedicated IT leaders, often titled CIOs or equivalent, which I guess make them a CIO technically. But others rely on CITs, central services. All right, so maybe there's a conversation about how there's some bloating in the infrastructure, possibly. Okay, I mean, if they can show that cutting that down, great. The problem is, again, they don't prove any of the shit that they're cutting, so I have no trust in this infrastructure.
So what we have here are a bunch of failing computer systems that
we don't know that. You're just making that claim based on no information.
Are preventing people from receiving their benefits, that are preventing people from preventing research from happening, that are extremely vulnerable to fraud.
How do we know that they're vulnerable to fraud? And also, if you have so much complex computer infrastructure, wouldn't that make you less susceptible to foreign invasions or like foreign database attacks? This makes no sense.
And we're fixing it.
Okay.
Does that include AI? Does that include kind of changing the system overall? That's, I guess, what people are afraid of, is they don't know what this is all looking like, and is it going
because there's no transparency.
to affect me in the long term?
It's going to affect them. It's going to affect people very positively. So the changes that we're doing here will ensure the solvency of the American government, of the United States of America. This is what we're trying to do: is ensure that people do receive their benefits in the future.
But the people are receiving their benefits in the future, or in the right now. So what are you talking about? You're making it less accessible.
And you can only receive your benefits if the country is operating in a healthy and competent way.
It already is for the most part. It could be better, but like we're pretending that it's horrible.
Next, how the Doge team plans to streamline some federal jobs and agencies, and later, Elon Musk answers some of your questions that you asked via X.
Wow, and promoting X with that plug.
Anthony Armstrong, Doge, Office of Personnel Management, you're Morgan Stanley banker, M&A guy. You know money, and this is a lot of money sloshing around.
There's a lot of money sloshing around. There's a lot of money sloshing out the door. And if you look at the federal government and the way the workforce works, it's really a one-way ratchet over decades.
It's only going up.
It's only going up. You never take it away. So that leaves you with duplicative functions. It leaves you with overstaffing, and it leaves you with functions in the wrong places. So a couple of examples.
I wouldn't doubt any of this. I need to see the receipts. You aren't showing anything.
Examples. Duplicative functions. Brad mentioned 27 CIOs. If you kept going with Brad, he would talk about the communications office. I think you've got 40 distinct communications offices in HHS, right? Yeah.
40?
Yeah, and that's not unusual, by the way. Multiple offices like that.
It's also not making anyone healthy.
This is not about the employees there. There's many hardworking, well-meaning people who took these jobs. These jobs were out there. They applied for them. They took them. They're doing what's there. It's just that they're duplicating the effort of 40 offices. So you've got that. You've got overstaffing. A good example of overstaffing would be the IRS has got 1,400 people who are dedicated to provisioning laptops and cell phones. So if you join the IRS, you get a laptop and a cell phone, you're provisioned. So if each of those IRS officers or employees provisioned 2 employees per day, you could provision the entire IRS in a little more than a month. So 12 times a year, you can re-provision.
Why would you have 1,400 people whose only job it is to give out a laptop and a phone?
Right. The whole IRS could be handled once a month. So that.
Wait, what? We're going to read it again. The 1,400 figure likely originates from the conflation with the X post claiming that the IRS has 1,400 people provisioning laptops, which has been repeated in critiques of HHS2. No HHS-specific audit or staffing breakdown, like the 2022 GAO report on HHS management, mentions 1,400 employees in this role. The OCIO's staff is in the hundreds, not thousands, and device provisioning is a small subset of the duties alongside cybersecurity and system maintenance. For context, HHS's total IT workforce including contractors, is estimated at 5,000 to 7,000 based on federal IT spending norms, about 10% of employees. But no data isolates provisioning to 1,400 people. Okay, so this is just a claim that they have made. These people, basically what we're hearing is that part of their job is to provision, I guess, things like laptops and cell phones, but it is only a fraction of what they do. Again, and they're not supplying us with any actual audit or breakdown or receipts of anything that they're saying. It's just constantly, we need to save money. Oh, isn't this crazy? There's 1,400 people who just give people cell phones. Like, that's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, it is. And it's not true. And you know it. And they're just lying. Every single one of these people, these fucking scumbag pieces of shit, are lying without any proof of anything that they are saying. It's insane.
You join the IRS.
And I'm not saying that everything is perfect, but like they won't show us any receipts. So it's like we know that there's probably inefficiency in the government, and they're latching onto that to make any outrageous claim that they possibly can make to justify them overreaching what they are doing. We already have auditors in the government, inspector generals. We already have this in the government, but they've decided that that's not good enough, and they want Elon Musk to take a look at it because he's great because he's done so well for all of his businesses. He buys into them. That's all he does. He's never created his own thing. I don't understand.
A laptop and a cell phone you're provisioned. So if each of those IRS officers or employees provisioned 2 employees per day, you could provision the entire IRS in a little more than a month. So 12 times a year you could re-provision.
Why would you have 1,400 people whose only job it is to get...
Hold on. Hey, Papa, I worked for the National Park Service, and typically it was the single IT agent that handed out equipment, i.e. tablets, laptops, monitors, etc. So this is probably BS. Okay. I mean, I don't know if I can verify that from you. I just wanted to read it out, but people take that with a grain of salt. Okay.
To give out a laptop and a phone.
Right. The whole IRS could be handled once a month. So that doesn't make any sense. And
yeah, because he's just lying. That's why it doesn't make any sense. He's just making it up. Incredible.
Trump's been very clear. It's scalpel, not hatchet, and that's the way it's getting done. And then once those decisions are made, there's a very heavy focus on being generous, being caring, being compassionate, and treating everyone with dignity and respect. And if you look at how people have started to leave the government, it is largely through voluntary means. There's voluntary early retirement, there's voluntary separation payments.
They're being pressured to voluntarily retire. So they're like, oh, we're trying to do this really nice. These people just want to retire. Yeah, because you're telling them that they have to, they're going to start firing people. What are you talking about? I just say dumb shit.
Put in place deferred resignation, the 8-month severance program. So there's a very heavy bias towards programs that are long dated, that are generous, that allow people to exit and go and get a new job in the private sector.
This is ridiculous. Genuine question. I like this question, by the way. Genuine question. If somehow it's possible if Trump was to remove tax under $150,000, your thoughts on the change? I don't think that it's a good change. I don't like the idea of the change. I'm not somebody. Well, first and foremost, they've already said that they can't do it until they balance the budget, which is like impossible. I think it's just something to appeal to people to make them feel happy, but it's never going to happen. But outside of that, I don't think it's a great idea. I mean, if you look at the numbers, there's the estimates are between 30 and 40% of our yearly revenue comes from people making $150,000 and less. And that's a significant amount of our revenue. I also think that people who make $150,000, they don't really need to make less money. I will tell you that my wife and I did very well last year. We made more than that collectively, the majority, which comes from me. And when, I live in New York. So in New York, maybe $150,000 collectively isn't a whole lot of money. But like in most states, if you make $150,000, your entire family makes $150,000, you don't need a tax cut for that. That doesn't mean that I'm not in favor of a restructure of our taxes. Specifically, I like the idea of some kind of a UBI or a negative income tax. And all a negative income tax is, and first of all, what it would do is help offset technology displacing jobs and driving down wages. Jobs are disappearing. Money's going higher, more to the top. You go to a supermarket. What do you got? You see there self-checkouts at the supermarket. This is a problem. Right. So a negative income tax would basically say it's the same thing as our current tax structure, except you'd get money back based on how much you made. So let's say right now, if you make $10,000 a year, you don't pay taxes. I don't know the exact number. Well, instead, if you made $10,000 a year, maybe you would get $5,000 back from the government. So the government would subsidize your wage while you're working. I think that this could be a really nice idea. It also makes it better than doing drastic increases to minimum wage. So it makes smaller businesses more competitive with bigger businesses. So I am in favor of some kind of restructured tax. We just have to also increase taxes on rich people and figure out a way to even tax technologies, because again, these are getting rid of jobs. And if we're having the conversation about how we want to artificially add a tremendous amount of tariffs to other countries selling goods to us, which will artificially raise the prices of these goods to employ more Americans in America, then I don't see how you couldn't justify taxing technology services to increase the price of our goods to artificially employ more people in America, right? So I think that this is the bigger issue. I think $150,000, I think it's a virtue signal to most people. I don't think it's actually productive or could possibly happen. So, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that specifically.
And you've heard a lot of news about rifts, about people getting fired.
Also, and just to add to that, just to be very clear, so right now the way that we do our structure for our taxes is we do a marginal tax structure. So I would imagine if you cut taxes for people making $150,000 and less, if you make $200,000, you're only getting taxed on 50,000 of those dollars. So if we cut taxes and we got rid of taxes for people making, like, let's say $50,000 and less a year, if you make $150,000, you're only getting taxed on $100,000. So you're still getting an incentive from this reduction from people making like this tax reduction for the $50,000 because you pay in chunks. Like your first 10,000 taxes a certain amount, then it's like the next 10,000, then at different percentages. I don't know the exact percentages. You can find the exact percentages, but let's say the first 12%, $12,000 you make is taxed at like 5%. The next 12,000 you make is taxed at 10%. So like you've now collectively paid 15%, right? It doesn't just go like, oh, you had $24,000 this year, you pay 10% of your income. No, it doesn't work like that. It works in brackets. So if you cut taxes for people, let's say under $40,000, people who make $100,000 are still benefiting significantly.
At this moment in time, less than 0.15, not 1.5, less than 0.15 of the federal workforce has actually been given a RIF notice. So
they're selected if they're leaving.
It is
Basically, almost no one's gotten fired.
Right. You guys are pressuring people to leave their jobs. You're trying to package it like a nice guys, but you guys are scumbags. Like I hate it when people say destructive things in a nice tone and pretend that it makes them a nice person.
That's what we're saying.
Tom Krause, working at Treasury, you are having access to the payment system, oversees all the outgoing payments. Essentially, those payments were going places we didn't know where they were going, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case, Brett. As an ex-CFO of a big public tech.
Okay. All right, cool. So let's check it out. There is no single definitive report providing massive untracked outflows, but several threads rooted in audits, Doge critiques, and public sentiments suggested gaps in transparency and accountability. HHS oversees enormous funds. Its 2024 budget was $1.7 trillion, with programs like Medicare and Medicaid, so HHS does quite a bit. The Office of the Inspector General has flagged issues with improper payments for years, which I'm sure is true. A May 2020, which means that they've been auditing it, but they haven't effectively figured out how to come up with a solution. OIG report found HHS didn't fully comply with the Payment Integrity Information Act, nothing unreported estimates for testimony assistance for needy families, and incomplete data for other programs like COVID-19 insured program. In 2023, improper payments across the HSS programs hit $50 billion, which is quite a bit of money. But I mean, if this is over the course of, let's say, a decade, then it's not really that much money comparatively. Though most were tied to documentation errors, not necessarily unknown destinations. Still, the sheer scale, 8% of Medicare's Part C, $27 billion in improper payments came from unverifiable medical records, raises questions about where some money does end up. Okay, so like I'm sure that there is a question on where some of this money ends up. Again, we're taking something that's real, which is an issue with how some of the, like where some of the money is going. A pretty small portion of it, which is something that we should get a handle on. And we're now basically insinuating that the entire system is just issuing checks and nobody knows where it's going. And that just doesn't seem to be the case. And they, again, don't give us any actual receipts.
Unfortunately, that's the case, Brett. As an ex-CFO of a big public tech company.
Yeah, I love CEOs and CFOs from these big companies. These are people I trust.
Really what we're doing is we're applying public company standards to the federal government. And it is alarming how the financial operations and financial management is set up today. There is actually really only one bank account that's used to disperse all monies that go out of the federal government.
Okay. You guys were just complaining that there's too many services. Wait, why do you care about this? You guys were just talking about how you don't like that there are different databases and it should be more efficient. You should basically just use one, but now you have an issue with the way that we distribute money?
One bank account.
It's a big one.
It's a big one.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. A couple weeks ago, it had $800 billion in it, but it's the Treasury General account. So when you hear, some of my colleagues here, what they're talking about in terms of...
Is this like even what's the problem? I don't know if this is real, but what is this... What does this matter if it is? I don't understand. We have to just read everything here. The concept of the U.S. government using a single bank account typically refers to the Treasury General account held at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. This serves as a primary checking account for the Department of Treasury, through which nearly all federal distributions and receipts flow. That makes sense to me. Wouldn't that make it easier to audit things? Why is this a bad thing? Can they explain that? Think of it as a central hub for the government's cash operations and fiscal. I'm assuming that they have other accounts that go into this account so they could be more easily tracked In fiscal year 2024, about $34 trillion flowed into the TGA and 33.6 flowed out, covering everything from benefits to vendor payments. According to the White House statements from March 25th, 2025, the idea isn't that every agency has its own literal checkbook tied to this one account. Rather, the TGA consolidates funds with agencies drawing from it via treasury processes, or in some cases, non-treasury distribution offices, which handled $1.5 trillion. Proponents, including some Doge advocates like Elon Musk, argue a single account boosts transparency. Isn't that what they're doing? Centralizing transactions makes it easier to track money compared to the fragment. Okay. So wait, but what's their problem here then? I'm not understanding.
Of the fraud, you have to ask, well, why is this allowed to happen at a financial level? Well,
what do you mean? What's wrong with this? This makes it more transparent.
It's actually quite simple but alarming. The Treasury, up until now, and thanks to President Trump, we're fixing this. In fact, there was an executive order that he just signed the other day, which is protecting America's bank account, because it really is the taxpayers' money. One, we're changing the culture. The culture is been not a lot of caring and not a lot of commitment to doing what's right relative to financial operations. There's $500 billion of fraud every year. There's hundreds of billion dollars of improper payments.
How do we know there's $500 billion in fraud every year? What? So from what I'm reading, this act that Trump implemented seems like a good thing. The plan gives Treasury a greater authority to monitor, which means that they already have the authority to do this, but okay, monitor and screen payments before they're released, requiring all executive agencies to provide detailed financial data for traceability. It centralizes control by shifting distribution duties from non-Treasury offices, which manage like $1.5 trillion, back to the Treasury, aiming to reduce duplicative reporting. This doesn't really seem like a bad thing. Do we need this? I don't know if we need it. It doesn't seem like a bad thing. That's fine. Okay. I mean, I'm fine with that. I'm on to this claim. The claim that $500 billion in fraud every year likely refers to estimates of annual fraud losses, though the exact context, whether global or specific to a region like the U.S., isn't specified in your question. Based on available data, he's from Insight. Globally, fraud is a massive issue. A 2019 report from the Crow and University of Portsmouth Center for Financial Fraud Studies estimates that fraud costs the global economy over $5 trillion annually, with losses averaging 7% basically of expenditures. While this figure is much higher than the $500 billion, it reflects the scale of fraud worldwide. For the U.S. specifically, the government agency, the GAO, Accountability Office, estimates in 2024 that the federal government loses between $233 billion and $520 billion annually to fraud based on data from fiscal years. This range comes from first of its kind study using investigative data, Inspector General reports, and confirms fraud figure. Wait, so this is a figures the upper end of the estimate aligns closely to $500 billion. The various number depends on what. I wonder what this means. Exactly. Like, what kind of fraud does this mean? But what I find a little bit interesting is that this is a study that was concluded in 2024, which means that Biden was the one who pushed for this, or at least under his administration. And I'm only saying that because it seems like they're trying to get a handle on this. But what do they mean by fraud? Like, how is there $500 billion? It's like 10% of our spending is fraud. All right, so this is the different ways of the fraud. Fake claims for pandemic relief. Holy fuck. This is probably the funniest thing in the world to me. So they're talking about fraud in the federal government, and all of these claims look like it's mostly fraudulent from big businesses, being fraudulent when it comes to the government. Fake claims for pandemic relief, PPP loan fraud, where $200 billion have been misappropriated per the Small Business Administration's Inspector General. Medicare and Medicaid overbilling fees, tens of billions of dollars annually. Overbilling, it comes from like the hospitals, okay, big businesses, tax fraud, unreported income, or bogus deductions caught in audits. Okay, I'm sure that this is true. We have to work on this. But one of the things that you guys really need to keep in mind is that all of this, what it sounds like, is what you would need to do is you would need to expand the IRS. You need to expand it. So here's number one. As of March 28th, 2025, there are indications that Trump's administration is taking steps to reduce the size and scope of the IRS, which actively goes against your idea of wanting to cut down on waste, fraud, and abuse in the government, since apparently a significant amount of this comes from people misreporting their taxes. So yeah, under Biden, he added $80 billion to he added $80 billion over 10 years to the IRS, okay? And apparently they were able to recover $1.3 billion. And just to be clear, a lot of that was probably back taxed, just to be clear. So it's not like you're going to be able to save out $1.3 billion every year. But this, or maybe you would, I guess I really don't know. But this is what you'd have to do to be able to generate revenue. So, I mean, you know, at a certain point, you're kind of going to have to come to a terms with, like, is it worth it to expand the IRS, or is it more fiscally responsible, unfortunately, to just let the fraud go? It depends on your apparently got more, like $20 billion. It's really it depends on like how you want to, I guess, quantify this, or what your justifier is. But you're going to have to expand the IRS, which does create jobs at the very least.
And we can't pass an audit. The consolidated financial report is produced by Treasury, and we cannot pass it on. We have material weaknesses. What that means is that if I was a public company CFO, I would effectively be removed. I couldn't file financial statements. I couldn't issue securities, which of course we depend on. Can't pass an audit.
Right. The federal government cannot pass an audit. It's impossible. In fact, in order to pass an audit, you need the information necessary to pass an audit. You need to have the payment codes, you need to have the payment explanation, and you need to have a person you can contact to understand why that payment was made. None of those things were mandatory until just recently, just a few weeks ago. In fact, maybe last week?
Yeah, we're serving 580 plus agencies. And up until very recently, effectively they could say make the payment and Treasury just sent it out as fast as possible. No verification. And so what we're doing is what any household would do. But imagine you're a household, you have a bank account, everyone has an ATM card connected to that account, everyone has a checkbook connected to that account. It's not just your children, it's not just your parents, it's your in-laws, it's your extended family, and they all can go to the account and disperse funds. No questions asked, no justification, no verification.
Up next, the Doge team targets government contracts.
I don't even know if that's true. I don't even know what I would look up, but okay.
And we'll show you what they're finding. Tyler Hassan, Interior Department. You're a former oil company CEO.
Dude, what the fuck? All these massive CEOs that are in charge of looking at government spending and cutting down on it. And so far what they found is we need to cut Medicare and Medicaid systems, and like we're not supposed to think that this is some kind of legitimate billionaire oligarchy that the government has been stacked with. This is unironically insane and a threat to our fucking democracy. You have oil CEOs and tech CEOs sitting on this Doge team telling us that we need to make significant cuts to our Medicare and Medicaid. Because why? Because their big businesses don't want to have to fund this. What the fuck is this? This is insane.
You're reviewing contracts before they're approved for funding. What do you find?
Well, Elon and Steve kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but I actually found that customer service survey contract. I actually have an example of one right here. I could have done this in high school. And
is that right?
I found it. I found it on the weekends because under the Biden administration, there was no departmental oversight within the Department of Interior whatsoever.
All right, great. The Biden administration didn't eliminate Department of Oversight. Eliminate oversight at the DOI, the Department of the Interior Office of Inspector General, the Interior Offices of Inspector General. Established in 1978, continued operating through Biden's term, tasked with auditing, investigating, and overseeing the agency's activities to prevent waste, fraud, and mismanagement. Reports from the OIG during Biden's tenure, like a 2023 review of offshore oil decomposition costs or a 2024 audit of tribal energy grants, show active oversight with findings of inefficiencies but no evidence of a complete absence of supervision. Claims of no departmental oversight have surfaced, particularly from critics on platforms like X, where users have posted statements like the Biden administration has absolutely zero oversight for the Interior Department. As recently, as of yesterday, these likely stem from political rhetoric tied to Trump's transition team or groups like the unofficial Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, which have pushed narratives of bureaucratic overreach or neglect under Biden. For instance, the House Oversight Committee, led by Republicans, has criticized Biden-era policies at DOI, such as offshore drilling bans, alleging that they lacked accountability. But they've not proven oversight itself was absent. I find it absolutely hilarious that an oil company CEO is working for Doge, making false claims about how there's no oversight for these committees. And the reason that they're making no oversight for these, the reason that this claim has been created is because Republicans are upset because of offshore drilling bans, saying that they lacked accountability. This is is this not fucking insane? How is this not fucking insane?
None. We are now reviewing every single contract, every single grant, and when things come to my attention that don't make sense, I'm bringing them to Secretary Burgum, and he's been fantastic. He's a businessman. He's very supportive of Doge. It's been wonderful to work with him.
Is the battle between government of decades of buildup and business, which you guys are, is that like a train hitting each other? I mean, it seems like it's pretty disruptive.
Well, this is a revolution, and I think it might be the biggest revolution in government since the original revolution.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, America's going to be in much better shape.
It's definitely not true.
Will be solvent. the critical programs that people depend upon will work, and it's going to be a fantastic future. But are we going to get a lot of complaints along the way? Absolutely. You know, one of the things I learned at PayPal.
Yeah, the biggest complaint is that you fucking assholes won't give us any level of like receipts.
Was who complains the loudest and with the most amount of fake righteous indignation? The fraudsters.
This is so funny. Holy fuck. I forget who it was, but there was some billionaire stupid fuckface that was talking about, that said this is like the new marching order. There was some millionaire fuckface who's like, my mom wouldn't complain if they got a late social security payment. They would just assume that it was late or something and blah, blah, blah. Only fraudsters complain. This is the new marching order. This is the new marching order, guys. Oh, only people who complain are fraudsters. What? Dude, it's insane. You guys attacked the Capitol. That's a complaint. You guys are all fraudsters by this logic? I don't understand what this means. Anybody who criticizes this administration is just a fraudster and they're lying. That's it. This is fucking insane. It's just a new marching order that you're supposed to take. It's the new slop you're supposed to pump out all over social media. Holy fuck.
It's a tell. There's NGOs that are crazy, like the $2 billion to Stacey Abrams NGO that basically didn't exist and suddenly gets $2 billion awarded from.
All right, let's just see what it is. $2 billion. Okay, so you're like referring to the claim. Okay, Stacey Abrams received $2 billion from the federal government. Power Forward Communities, a nonprofit coalition, did receive $2 billion grant from the EPA in April 2024 under Biden's administration. This came from the Inflation Reduction Act's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, aimed at the decarbonizing homes. Think energy efficient applications, or what the fuck? Dude, I can't say appliances. Holy fuck, I can't even read today. Efficient appliances and household upgrades, especially for low-income areas. The coalition includes 5 groups, blah, 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 blah. Okay, great. What's the problem with this? What's the issue with having grants for people utilizing more energy-efficient products, especially poor people? Like, that's the people who can't afford energy efficiency the most. If you want to claim that some of the money's been mishandled, that's fine, but like, what does this have to do with anything?
From the federal government. She has why? And there are many such cases like that.
But who cares if she gets? What's the problem with that?
NGOs that are crazy, like the $2 billion to Stacey Abrams NGO that basically didn't exist and suddenly gets $2 billion awarded from the federal government.
Yeah, for like, if you want to say that maybe it's too much money, fine. But like, he's not even explaining what the context is.
She has why? And there are many such cases like that.
Why? What?
Suddenly gets $2 billion awarded from the federal government. She has why? And there are many such cases like that.
Why? For what? For federal? What for fucking? What the fuck?
I think that most
it's for a green energy grant.
People, common sense wise, would say the fraud's got to end.
Yeah.
They're concerned about the 94-year-old mother who skips a check or somehow doesn't get what she's supposed to get.
Right. And what we're trying to say is actually that the 94-year-old grandmother is actually, as a result of Doge's work, going to get her check.
She already is getting her check.
She's not going to be robbed by fraudsters like she's getting robbed today. And the solvency
she's not getting. What are you talking about?
Of the federal government will ensure that she continues to receive those Social Security checks, that Medicare continues to work, without which we're all doomed. The reason we're doing this is because if we don't do it, America's going to go insolvent. We're going to go bankrupt. Okay. And nobody's going to get anything.
You know what else you guys could do? Stop cutting taxes for rich people, and then maybe we could afford our fucking deficit. Like, we could afford our budget.
Are you guys all doing it? I mean, you can pipe up, but you don't have to be here, right? I mean, you don't have to be doing this.
I hate, dude. I like Brett Barr. He's probably the most reputable person next to Christopher Wallace at Fox, and maybe even news anchor in general. That was the biggest literal cocksuck cum slurp I've ever seen in my entire life. Oh, you rich billionaire CEOs who obviously are not the reason why our country is falling. You guys don't even have to be here. Like, you're just so amazing. Like, you're basically donating your time. Oil CEO who has a vested interest in, dismantling offshore drilling, regulations that Biden implemented, which is why you're on here spouting disinformation. Why else would you be here? Like, what else? This is crazy. You guys are such good people. Like, oh my God.
Blessed with 4 beautiful children, my wife and I. But we have a real fiscal crisis, and this is not sustainable. And what's worse,
so fucking
back to my children and everyone else's children, is we are burdening them with that debt.
You guys are the burden. Billionaires are the burden on society. You guys provide next to nothing when it comes to fucking value in general. You guys are continuing to make more and more money by using technologies to kill our fucking jobs. And you're sitting here, oh, we're in such a bad spot. You guys are getting massive tax cuts. That's why we're getting fucked. You want to lower the deficit? Get these guys to pay their fucking taxes. What the fuck?
And it's only going to grow.
Steve, there's not a lot of hierarchy here. You guys are kind of all approaching it in different, silos, but with the same kind of goal, right? I mean, this is really Silicon Valley private sector colliding with government.
Yeah, exactly, and we're headed in a bad path, but then the chance of success exists. And just the one that just is in my head right now, which is a fairly mundane one, but I think is very illustrative, is credit cards. There are in the federal government around 4.6 million credit cards for around 2.3 to 2.4 million employees.
Okay, great. Let's take a look at what this means, because this could be an issue, right? There's so many 4.6 million credit cards seems like a lot. You're referring to the 4.6. I mean, I would imagine if they're given some kind of a credit card that's used for necessary expenses, hopefully necessary expenses, that having an individual credit card would allow people to track it more, but then you are paying interest on it, so I don't really know how that works. You're referring to the 4.6 million government credit cards that have been a hot topic lately. As of March 28th, here's the deal. The Department of Government Efficiency under Elon Musk's lead flagged the U.S. government flagged that the U.S. government had about 4.6 million active credit cards or accounts in fiscal year 2024. These cards racked up roughly 90 million transactions, totaling around $40 billion in spending. According to Doge's February 18th, 2025 post and follow-up reports, which I imagine they have no receipts for because they never provide those. This figure comes from the General Services GSA's Smart Pay program, which handles payment solutions for over 250 government agencies. The Department of Defense led the pack with about 2.4 million accounts and 27.2 million transactions, followed by heavy hitters like Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security. The cards split between travel and purchase types are used for everything from gas and lab supplies to work trips, with an average transaction of 441 per the GSA's FY or the fiscal year 2024 status. The 4.6 million number has raised eyebrows because it's nearly double the 2.4 million federal civilian employees, suggesting more cards than people. Doge's take is that this signals waste unused or duplicate cards. That might be true. Some with $10,000 limits, potentially ripe for abuse. That could also be true. A 2014 congressional review found personal misuse like $76,500 at one agency, and 2023 DoD audit flagged $500,000 in questionable spending at casinos and bars. That's fueled the narrative of bureaucrats gone wild, which absolutely makes sense. One of the weird things about this, though, is that Doge hasn't done a single study by themselves. They're referencing studies done by other administrations, in particular Biden's administration, and they're going, look, there's all this waste, fraud, and abuse, and you'd never know about it without us. But you don't do your own research. You guys are just looking at research that already existed, which implies to me that they're auditing it for a reason, to try to operate with government transparency. And then you're acting like you need to do these massive cuts to everything rather than something more reasonable, which we could have done instead of massive spending cuts and like firing fucking air traffic controllers. Critics say that the card count reflects overlap, expiring cards reissued, or legit needs contractors for visitors, not just bloat, which is probably true. But I'm sure that there are people who use this fraudulently. But again, it's like they're taking such a drastic effort.
For around 2.3 to 2.4 million employees. This doesn't make sense.
Right.
And so one of the things all of the teams have worked on is we've worked with the agencies and said, do you need all of these credit cards? Are they being used? Can you tell us physically where they are?
I hope they're getting frequent flyers.
Actually, on a different note, the rewards program, the federal
we didn't need an unofficial government orchestration of billionaires to come in and be like, hey guys, Biden's administration, under Biden's administration, they did research and found that there was some like waste, fraud, and abuse. Let's hire a bunch of billionaires with a vested interest in fucking us right into the asshole and destroying our G-spots. Let's have these guys come in and be like, hey, like, what the fuck are we doing? Why do they need to be doing this?
The government has is actually not very good. That's a whole other.
It's a negotiation.
Right, yeah, exactly. But so far,
if you wanted to be like truly transparent and you wanted to use CEOs, you'd import CEOs from like fucking Denmark to come in, like unbiased sources. Because all these CEOs, these tech CEOs and oil CEOs and gas CEOs, all these people have still have a legitimate interest in advocating for reductions in taxes and expenditures and different policies that have a negative impact on them. And so why would you allow them to be the ones to come in and audit? There's a literal conflict of interest with every single one of these people. This is why people are calling this like an oligarchy. If you wanted to be unbiased, you would import people from other reputable allied countries to come in and be like, okay, let's take a look at your government spending. Well, we can't do that because we're destroying our fucking trade agreements and we're destroying our allegiances and our alliances with these other countries while we are taking it up the ass by fucking the Russian government, pushing disinformation for them, like Ukraine attacked first. It's ridiculous.
The teams have worked together, and they've reduced it from 4.6 million to 4.3 million. So
we're taking it easy. But clearly that should not be.
They probably didn't reduce anything. I almost guarantee that's just like some of the overlapped cards, and they haven't done anything.
There should not be more credit cards than there are people. Yeah.
Joe, middle-level employees, are they seeing a benefit to being empowered by taking out bureaucracy?
No, of course not. They're stressed that they're going to lose their job.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think what you're seeing is taking the best of Silicon Valley and the business world and bringing it into the government. We're bringing the best practices and the best methodologies, and people are inspired, right? Especially on the retirement process, which I can speak.
They're inspired. The people who are being pushed to fucking retire early and getting fired are inspired. Oh my God, guys, who else would say something like that? Oh, a CEO would frame things like that.
They've been trying to modernize and get off of paper since early 2000s. Very unsuccessfully. Every attempt has gone over budget and been
because it's expensive to modernize the system. Which, by the way, I would say let's invest in that. But you guys are saying you're trying to cut money, but that's not the case.
Canceled because it hasn't been successful. And so, I showed up and I feel like I'm here because it's an interesting problem. We can use design to solve it and good engineering, and really create a better experience for everybody.
We're talking about elementary financial controls that are necessary for any company to function. So, like, if the federal government, if a commercial company operated the way the federal government does, then it would be immediately go bankrupt. It would be delisted. The officers would be arrested. The changes we're putting in place.
Maybe I don't even know if that's true, but we're not. We are the government. We can't a typical company can shut down one of its stores to remodel it for 6 months. We don't have the same ability to do drastic changes very quickly the way that they're suggesting. We're not running a business. The government is not a business.
Will enable the federal government to pass an audit. It will enable taxpayers to know where the money is going and know that their hard-earned tax dollars are being spent well. The ways that the government is defrauded is that the computer systems don't talk to each other. So if the computer systems don't talk to each other, then you can exploit that gap, and fraudsters exploit that gap to take advantage. If, for example, there were.
All right, this seems to be like a relatively valid claim that there can be exploitation because these systems don't talk to each other. But I would imagine, the offshoot is that all these systems talk to each other more effectively, which is not necessarily a bad idea, or you consolidate the number of systems, and then wouldn't that be easier for people to hack it? Maybe not. Maybe I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about.
Over $300 million of small business administration loans that has been given out to people under the age of 11.
Wait, what?
Small business administration loans take advantage. If, for example, there were over $300 million of small business administration loans that has been given out to people under the age of 11.
This doesn't seem to be entirely accurate what they're saying. Okay, the Department of Government, or Doge, because these are the only people making the claims, led by Elon Musk, reported on March 8th that during the 2020 and 2021 peak COVID years, the SBA granted about 5,500 loans totaling $312 million to borrowers whose only listed owner was 11 years old or younger at the time of the distribution. How much money did they give out in the first place? So it seems to be roughly $55 billion. So would be what is a billion? A million is a 1/1000th of a million is a 1/1000th of a billion. So we're talking about percentage-wise significantly low. Let's see. So blah, blah, blah. Listen, 11 years or younger to distribute. The figure comes straight from the Doge's X post and aligns with an SBA spokesperson's statement to Snopes. On March 12th, 2025, confirming over 5,500 loans totaling about $312 million went to businesses whose owners were 11 or under. Okay. These are mostly paycheck, PPP loans and economic injury disaster loans rushed out during the pandemic, right? Because that was a pretty big thing. That was pretty negative for the country. Noted all of the 5,600 roughly loans use social security numbers with mismatched names, hinting at fraud. Think identity theft or sloppy paperwork, not kids actually applying. Okay, so that seems like there was fraudulent. There was fraud when it came to getting these loans out, which would make sense because it was a pandemic that was drastically negative for the economy because we had a horrific pandemic that was killing, I think it was 1 million people over the course of 3 years alone, based on excess death rates. And so they were rushing them out, and there are some people who were able to be fraudulent on the system. Absolutely, I'm sure that's true, but this context is so necessary to hear. Because not even all of it would necessarily be some kind of fraud. Some of it could just be people applying incorrectly, writing the wrong social security number down, people fucking up their paperwork. I'm sure some people stealing, scammers. I'm sure that's true. But like they're removing this context when talking about it to make it seem like there's this like magical fucking thing happening, when the reality is that we had a massive economic break when COVID happened, and we needed to react quickly. And this is one of the negatives of reacting quickly. But if we didn't react quickly, yeah, maybe we'd have less fraud, potential fraud. But then also we would have been significantly negatively impacted. Okay.
Of Small Business Administration loans that has been given out to people under the age of 11.
Well, actually, to add to it, it's 300 million under the age of 11 and over 300 million to over the age of 120.
Definitely.
Small business loans.
Correct.
Yes. The oldest American is 114. So it's safe to say if they're...
You see, like, they're not even explaining the context here. Like, they know what they're doing. They're actively misinforming their audience. If you watch this entire thing, this 40-minute video here, on face value, and you believe what they're saying, you're going to be terrified. But they're lying so much that it is taking us a significant amount of time to parse through the deceiving and this deceptive way that they push out this information. It's fucking so concerning. Holy shit.
Their age is 115 or above. They're fake. Or they should be in the Guinness Book of World Records. And we should not be giving out loans to babies.
We're not. Okay.
So the youngest recipient of a Small Business Administration loan is a 9-month-old, which is a very, very precocious baby we're talking about here. So obviously it was just fraudulent. And they do terrible things. They actually will see that a kid's been born. They will steal that kid's social security number and then take out a loan and leave that kid with a bad credit rating.
That might be true. Possible, maybe, in this instance, because of, the pandemic.
There was literally a baby. The terrible things are being done.
It's not explaining anything.
And how
we're stopping these terrible things.
And you can stop it? I mean,
well,
we are stopping it.
The reason this is happening is because the two systems are not talking to each other.
Yeah.
Well, no, this is the reason it happened is because there needed to be a quick response to the COVID so that people didn't economically collapse. So the reason that this has stopped is because COVID ended. And so, like, now they have the time to more accurately, because I'm sure there's still fraud, more accurately parse through this information to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Yes.
Right. And so you don't know at the Small Business Administration that you're giving a loan to a 9-month-old, which happened in one case, because you're not crossing.
In one case, holy fuck, one single case, holy shit.
It's referencing that with the Social Security Administration data that has birth dates. So that very, very simple fix eliminates tremendous fraud. And that,
sure, I'm sure that would have helped. Absolutely.
There are multiple systems across the government where the systems are not speaking with one another. And if you just solve...
You can add your child to your bill or credit line to build credit. Wait, is that true? Yeah, so to your reference that you can add a child to your bill line or credit, like you can. There's generally no strict, number, but they usually limits like 13 or 15 years old is the minimum. But you can add children to it. That's interesting. I wonder how many of these is that. I couldn't imagine it's all of it, but I wonder how many of these is adding your kid to the line to help them generate credit. I have no idea.
That simple problem, you would solve a huge amount of fraud.
Are you surprised? So one of the ways that, like one of the key tricks that the fraudsters pull is that they will use the fact that someone is marked as live and as sort of just that social security number is marked as live in Social Security, and then get disability and unemployment insurance for a dead person because the databases don't talk to each other.
I'm sure that this is happening on a very small scale, but this is not happening in any major way. And when you look at this with him claiming that there are a ton of people over the age of 120 receiving funds, which they're not, they have proved there's literally no evidence of that. That's supposed to be the claim, is that all these people over 120, there's some fucking guy some guy named Frank pretending that, like, oh, this is, I'm this 120-year-old, give me their Social Security money. It's not happening to this degree, but that's the insinuation that you're supposed to get out of it. You're supposed to be afraid.
All they got was from Social Security is like, is this person alive? Yes, they're not alive. It's falsely marked. Person is falsely marked as alive. It's Social Security, but
they don't get money just because they're marked as alive. And they're not even necessarily marked as alive. They just don't have a complete death record. There's a difference between being marked alive versus not having a complete death record, because you're somebody that's like 120 years old and would cost upwards of $10 million to get this information corrected when they're not receiving money. And again, he knows this, but he's lying. He doesn't care.
But that person, a fraudster can now get unemployment and disability from a dead person. This is happening all the time at scale.
Are you surprised at some of the legal efforts and some of the judges that have weighed in? There's about 8 or 10 now of these cases that are at least temporary holds. They're being challenged by the DOJ.
Right.
Are you surprised by that pushback?
Well, it's the DC circuit is notorious.
Well, yeah, well, it makes sense that they would. Well, it makes sense that they would do that because they have no facts or anything that they're doing.
For having a very far left bias. And when you look at the people close to some of these judges, where are they working? Are they
I don't know. Were they working for George Soros, Elon?
working at these NGOs? Oh, they're the ones getting this money. Does that seem like a system that lacks corruption? It sounds like corruption to me.
Not what? What? These judges are appointed, and they're. What are you talking about? What?
Last thing, do you guys all see this as a patriotic?
Well, I didn't even know this. Apparently, the Social Security Administration does. A chatter said this, and I verified it. They automatically stop paying benefits to somebody who's 115 years old. This has been a policy that's been in place since 2015. So what they're saying isn't even correct. So even these people that are 120 years old and older, they couldn't possibly be getting payments because they automatically get shut off at 115. That's fucking insane. I didn't even know that was true. I appreciate you telling me that.
Duty? Is that really what this is about?
It's essential.
I'm sorry.
Does that seem like a system that lacks corruption? It sounds like corruption to me.
Last thing, do you guys all see this as a patriotic duty? Is that really what this is about?
It's essential.
I do, 100%. I was running 5 businesses in Houston, and I left that. I left.
I just wanted to understand what an NGO was. So it's a non-governmental organization. It's a group that operates independently of government control, usually to tackle social, environmental, or humanitarian issues. They're not for profit, meaning that they don't aim to make money for owners or shareholders, but they still have paid staff and big budgets. Think of them as a private. Great. So it sounds like it's an independent company that the government hires to do something without a strict profit incentive, though people are still making money, obviously. So there can be ways that they can be taken advantage of. But they're mostly for environmental tasks. And so now what we're doing is we're labeling NGOs, which generally try to reduce, the destruction of the planet, as bad, because I guess conservatives just don't believe in preserving our future for our fucking babies that you're forcing to be birthed and then not caring about the second that they come out of some fucking womb.
Great people to do this. And my wonderful wife said, go for it. And here I am. But I feel like this is me giving back to the country.
If we don't do this.
That guy's an oil CEO, by the way. He's an oil CEO or a former. I don't even know if they're former, but these guys are fucking CEOs of companies that are saying this. Oh, I'm just trying to give back. I'm a CEO. I'm just trying to give back. There's no reason why I would possibly want to have a really close position to the government. I'm a CEO, dude. Biden's administration stopped us from being able to drill anywhere we wanted for environmental reasons. Hey guys, I'm doing this because I love this country. Yeah, I bet you don't. I bet you're not just trying to get closer to the Trump administration and closer to spending cuts to benefit you and line your own pockets. Perfect.
We're stuck. The ship, unless this exercise is successful, the ship of America will sink. That's why we're doing it.
Well, gentlemen,
this fucking fear mongering over and over again.
I really appreciate the time today, and hopefully it took some of the myth and mystery out of Doge and what's happening behind the scenes.
Thank you.
We asked on X, your platform, for some
Oh, Jesus Christ, we're doing this fucking X bullshit.
questions. And here is C. Sperling.
Yeah.
He writes, are they happy with the speed at which they're making changes? Are there any changes they would like to make but haven't yet?
Well, I think in the context of the government, we're moving like lightning. In the context of what I'm used to moving, it's slower than I'd like. So what seems like incredibly fast action by government standards is it's slower than I'd like, to be totally frank. But we're all making solid progress.
I'm just double speeding this because I just want to. I don't think it's going to be relevant, but I want to see what it is.
A very sort of thorny problem, a tough problem, really it's kind of like painful homework, frankly, is reconciling all of the government databases to eliminate the waste and fraud. These databases don't talk to each other, and that's really the source of that's the biggest vulnerability for fraud, is the fact that these databases don't talk to each other. So we need to reconcile databases. It's a frankly painful homework, but it has to be done, and will greatly improve the efficiency of the government systems.
We didn't talk about any
Dude, you're trolling me. I love you.
plans to approach cuts at the Pentagon. You're in there.
The Pentagon has not passed an audit in a very long time. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, they will lose $20, $30 billion a year, but they don't know where. They literally don't know where it went.
So then why do you guys consistently give them? Didn't Trump just give? I swear to God, Trump just gave them increased the budget for the military. What the fuck?
I mean, Senator Collins was telling me about how she gave the Navy $12 billion for extra submarines, got 0 extra submarines, and then when she held a hearing, said where'd the $12 billion go? They didn't know.
Talking to those guys, and you have a great team from all over the country. You don't have to be here. You don't have to be here. There's now been these many cases of violence and vandalism at Tesla dealerships. How does that affect your employees, your customers? What does it mean to you? How have you taken that in?
Well, I think a great wrong is being done to the people of Tesla and to our customers. Tesla is a peaceful company that has made great cars, great products. That's all it's done. It hasn't harmed anyone. And yet people are committing violence. They're firebombing Tesla dealerships. They're shooting guns into stores. They're threatening people. They're issuing death threats against me and other Tesla personnel.
I don't care. I mean, it's not good. I don't want people to get hurt, but I don't care about Teslas getting bombed as long as nobody's gets hurt by it. Listen, not for nothing, but you like we live in such a weird world where we've turned away from common sense. If you're going to throw out Hail Hitlers and you're going to support the AfD party in Germany, which is the Nazi party in Germany actively, which Elon Musk did on social media, people are going to look at you like you're a fucking Nazi, and they're going to not like that, and they're going to protest. And this is what the protesting looks like. You guys keep talking about revolution. You guys did a fucking J6 because you falsely thought that there was some kind of a magical shadow government that stopped Trump from winning. But even though he won twice, and I imagine if there was a shadow government, they wouldn't have missed that shot. I could. That's why people are doing it. I don't think violence is right, but like you're literally a Nazi. Like I don't know what else to tell you. And not only that, but you support Russia. You're pushing disinformation for Russia, saying Ukraine started the war, which they didn't, and saying that Zelensky is a dictator. So obviously people are going to look at you like you're you're a literal Nazi because you seem to be one, or you at least want those people to follow you on X. I guess I don't really know. So I'm sorry that the Teslas are getting firebombed. I hope nobody gets hurt, and that's so sad. But also, this is why it's happening. This is why it's happening. I don't understand. And frankly, the Nazi party is the most comfortable on the right. There are no left-wing Nazis, but there are a significant amount of right-wing ones.
What are they doing this for? Why? And what's happening, it seems to me, is they're being fed propaganda by the far left, and they believe it. It's really unfortunate.
Getting butt after any type of terrorist attack is wild. I just like, if you disagree with me that he's a Nazi, that's totally fine. You could say that, but to sit here and say that it's not like I don't really understand what is your point that you're saying. So if you're like, hey, I don't think Elon Musk is a Nazi, so it's not justifiable, that's fine. But being like, hey, saying butt after any terrorist attack is wild. Is it? I mean, if we're talking about somebody who actually supports legitimate fascist Nazi behavior. Why is that? Why is the butt wild? What is life to you? Just sitting down and taking it like a good little boy or girl, and just getting completely fucked? Or I don't really understand. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know what else to tell you. You don't get to throw Hail Hitlers out, and sit here and pretend that you're not a support Nazi party in Germany. So I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, it sure is. However, the damage isn't done to his company overall. It's done to the little guy. Okay, so what do you think people should do? I don't care. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I guess it's not perfect, but this is what people are going to do. Don't be a Nazi and people won't fucking attack your product. I don't know what to tell you because it is having a negative impact on him and his public perception. So,
the real problem is not the people. It's not like the crazy guy that firebombs a Tesla dealership. It's the people pushing the propaganda that caused that guy to do it. Those are the real villains here, and we're going to go after them. And the president's made it clear we're going to go after them. The ones providing the money, the ones pushing the lies and propaganda, we're going after them.
He literally has the biggest lie propaganda machine, which is Twitter on Earth, and then it gets supported by the biggest news organization, Fox News. So I don't know what conservatives pretending that they don't have control of propaganda and the media is fucking insane. Especially since the Mueller report factually found that Russia wanted Trump to win. Okay, there was no direct Russian collusion, but there were certainly enough links for 34 indictments. So I don't know, man. It seems like conservatives definitely have media disinformation in their fucking up their sleeves.
And it's been this evolution. I mean, the last administration was going to mandate electric vehicles, and now you see on the far left some efforts to go after electric vehicles. It's quite something.
It is ironic. I mean, it seems like
not really.
The most ironic outcome is most likely. But yeah, I mean,
personally, it's got to take a toll.
It does. Yeah, it does. I think there's some real evil out there, and we have to overcome it.
I mean, you have been called a Nazi, a white supremacist, a fascist.
I mean, about this sort of.
Yeah, because he is. What do you want me to tell you? He is. He supports Russia. He throws out Hail Hitlers. He supported the Nazi party in Germany. He supported the AfD party in Germany. It's a fucking Nazi party.
Yeah. I mean, they've still got it. I guess they still need to call me Stalin, Mussolini, whatever, Genghis Khan or whatever. I mean, they've called the president all these things. I think at one point there was.
Yeah, he had people insurrect the government, attack the government building while he tried to pressure Pence to take faulty electors. And then he pardoned those people. Of course he's a fucking fascist. What are you talking about? What?
Magazine cover which said President Trump was worse than Hitler, Mussolini, and Stalin combined.
He's not quite that bad, but he's getting there.
The president hasn't killed anyone. He hasn't started any wars. In fact, he's good at stopping wars.
I mean, he's not really, but okay.
So this is obviously they're pushing these lies. And why do they push these
good
lies?
At stopping wars because you're saying that Ukraine should give up its agency and autonomy to Russia? Yeah, you're a fucking smart guy.
Yes. And I think that we need to hold people responsible for pushing these lies because those lies almost got the president killed.
What's something that people wouldn't know about the president?
Yeah, I guess they should have lied harder, huh?
You're pretty close to him now. You spend a lot of time with him. What's something that people wouldn't know?
I think the president is a good man. I think he is an honest man. And I've yet to see him.
I don't even understand how you could claim Trump is an honest person. He's not. And we know this. You all know this. Trump supporters know this. MAGA supporter knows this. This entire strategy for getting what he wants is to actively lie. Like people just say, "Hey, art of the deal." Every time Trump inflates a number, they go, "That's the art of the deal." He lied about Ukraine getting $300 billion from us. It's like 110 or 120 or something like that. It's significantly less. He lies about like almost everything he says is an exaggeration, because the art of the deal is to lie about it and then try to like meet you in the middle when it comes to the negotiation tactics. But he lies constantly.
Do anything mean or anything that is wrong, that I would say morally wrong. Not even once.
You know, a lot is coming your way, but sometimes you say stuff or post stuff that gets attention. You give it out. In other words, Democratic Arizona Senator Mark Kelly posted on X about his trip to Ukraine to push for continuing to send U.S. weapons and support there, and you posted that he was a traitor.
I don't even understand this. Just left Ukraine. What I saw proved to me we can't give up on Ukrainian people. Everyone wants the war to end, but any agreement has to protect Ukraine's security and can't be a giveaway to Putin. Let me tell you about my trip and why it's important we stand with Ukraine. And Elon Musk goes, "You are a traitor." Nobody wants war, but we should give Ukraine as much money as they need to continuously fight against Russia's overreach of agency and autonomy onto Ukraine. They're killing those people to steal land from them. You can't let these people win. Last time we placated a dictator, which was Hitler, they started the World War. So why would we do that again and start World War III? We have to allow Ukraine to have the resources to stand firm, because if Russia starts feeling emboldened to start pushing through Eastern Europe, that will start another world war. Okay? Giving money to Ukraine will stop a world war. But why would you call them a traitor? A traitor. You don't just disagree. You're a traitor.
Well, why do that? Well, I think somebody should be...
Why a traitor is insane.
Should care about the interests of the United States above the interests of another country.
First of all, I don't necessarily. Well, first of all, I do. Second of all, helping Ukraine protects the interests of our country as well. We're giving someone else the ability to, a Western ally, the ability to defend themselves against a foreign dictator that's antithetical, by the way, to Western values. So no American is dying in this war. All we have to do is give basically what equates to $20 a month to Ukraine per person for them to fight for us. How is this not in the benefit of us? And you said, isn't Zelensky a dictator? What makes you think that he's a dictator? No, Zelensky is not a dictator at all. What are you talking about? Where did you hear that? And why would you believe that?
And if they don't, they're a traitor.
Yeah.
This guy's an idiot. He's a fucking loser.
But he's a decorated veteran, a former astronaut, a sitting U.S. senator.
It doesn't mean it's okay for him to put the interests of another country above America.
I'm sorry. I just want to hear what his credentials are again.
They're a traitor.
Yeah, but he's a decorated veteran, a former astronaut, a sitting U.S. senator.
Okay, so the veteran alone should make you go like, oh, this guy fought for our country. Maybe he's worth listening to militarily.
It doesn't mean it's okay for him to put the interests of another country above America.
Okay, I'm sorry. So basically what we're hearing is that we should listen to Elon Musk, who wasn't even born here, who got all his money handed to him by his mommy and daddy. Every company he's invested in, he just bought out to invest in, to go. He didn't create any company. He just bought into these companies. And we should listen to him when it comes to the conversation about war over a decorated military veteran. And not only that, but he's a traitor if he doesn't agree with Elon Musk. Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay. All right. That's incredible.
Obviously, there are some Republicans who think supporting Ukraine is the right thing still. But
yeah,
there's
it is.
a battle back and forth about how do you think it comes to an end?
Well, I think there will be a negotiated peace. And the thing that we should be concerned about is we should have empathy.
Can I tell you what Western values are? Fundamental freedoms of speech, freedoms for men, women, children, LGBTQ people. Like what are Western values to you? I don't understand.
For the thousands of people that are dying every day in trenches, for no movement in the lines.
Ukrainians want to fight for their country. We should give them the resources to do it. I don't care about a single Russian dying. I mean, I feel bad for the Russians, but I don't care about the government. So them dying means nothing to me. I care about Ukrainians. Those are our allies, and they are trying to uphold the autonomy of their own country.
So the borders remain the same. For the past 2 years, thousands of people have died every week.
They want to fight for their country. They don't want peace. They want justice. What the fuck am I going to infringe on that?
For nothing. For what?
For what? Because 20% of their country is occupied by Russia. Are you fucking stupid?
And I take great offense.
For this guy's a loser.
At those who those who put the appearance of goodness over the reality of it.
This is literally him.
Those who
This is insane. This guy's a fucking traitor.
virtue signal and say, oh, we can't give in to Russia, but have no solution to stopping thousands of kids dying every day.
Yeah, you know what the solution is? Russia to stop. They violated 25 ceasefire agreements over the past decade. Do you think that giving them 20% of occupied land, of Ukrainian land, which is what they're doing, you think giving them all that, or even a fucking smidgen of that, is going to stop the violence in the long run? This is a virtue. This is the virtue signal. That's literally it. It's just a fucking virtue signal.
They just want that to continue forever. I have contempt for such people. I don't want to make that clear.
Yeah. So you're optimistic.
Because their virtue signaling and their lack of a solution means that kids don't have...
No, there's a solution. Continue to fund Ukraine in a war that could be endless. Let them have their justice. Let them fund them until they don't want to fight anymore. They still want to fight.
A father. It means that parent lost a son. For what?
that was the fakest and gayest fucking bout of anger that I've ever seen. For what? What do you mean? What the fuck was that, dude? You obviously don't care. Anybody could see that was so performative.
Nothing.
So you're optimistic.
This weird fake empathy it's just very jarring.
The president's plan might work.
The president's plan is the only thing that will work.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey,
go fuck yourself, Sean Hannity.